you believe me? You got the wrong number. Look, 1 second. I can't give you an infantry charge. We're only doctors. The best we can do is storm the enemy and take their tonsils out. How did he try it this time?
Pretending to be a business girl.
Klinger. Klinger, where did your mother and I go wrong?
How's he doing? What's the matter? Afraid he'll die and run your weak kid? Forceps. One of your slots for your charm regimen. Start setting irrigation pump.
Are you out of your sadomasochistic mind, sir?
Okay, when?
Well, it's hard to say. Very hard. Dr. Pierce here has had a lot of experience in moving patients that are about to be executed.
It was my postgraduate special. Blindfold and last cigarette, 102.
All right, sign him out, put him on a stretcher. I'll take the responsibility.
We'll have to confer on this.
We'll leave you a minute. So amuse yourself. Take some fingerprints. Break somebody on the rack. I could take somebody around for last burger.
You're going to let him take that 16-year-old kid down the cellar, put him against the wall.
Thank you, Robin.
Storm.
Big stuff.
Colonel, there's a medical consideration which supersedes the military. That man is still unconscious. We can't release him in that condition.
You can sleep through the whole execution. That wouldn't be any fun, would it?
I want to talk to your commanding officer.
You gonna execute him instead?
How far? He's down in Tokyo attending a series of medical conferences.
And dodging hotel days.
Where can I reach him?
You could try Madame Chang's whoopee parlor.
Or the Pachinko Palace. He's in the semifinals.
Got my cutie pies, Agent.
Thank you.
Who's your second in command?
Major Frank Burns, M.D.
Manning depressive. It's an honorary title.
You're also schizoid.
Listen to bunks.
Only in America, y'all.
They're pushing
Gotta
you
love
out
it.
pretty good cooperation-wise.
Not to mention wise guy wives.
An African in
I lay a charge of obstructing
a
the
chicken and a beef taco made by authentic Mexicans in California. Looking at MASH on TV with the subtitles on. Gotta love it. Thank you, Trump, for making America great again. Before you became president, I could have knew this. Now I can. You so awesome.
Let's go. I've looked everywhere, so you gotta help me find it.
Have no fear, Rager. We'll look in every tent. We'll conduct a louse-to-louse search.
Oh. You're going to sign up my prisoner?
Colonel, I have a more important problem on my hands.
Yo,
One of our teddy bears.
you up talk, y'all?
You're being foolish. We have millions of things.
I don't know how, but they need to find a way to get the damn tacos and burritos and the ingredients that they have out here in the West Coast, get that shit to the East Coast, yo. East Coast missing out on some authentic Mexican food. Wow.
Major Burns, acting commander, and I, adjutant, have been informed that you and Captain McIntyre refused to release Colonel Flagg's prisoner.
Meanwhile, Aunt Martha, having taken the trap in the woods, is lying in a ditch near town.
Those in medical units I have to pull into a funny farm.
If kids too sick to travel, he could die between here and Seoul.
I'll take that chance.
Oh, you'll take that chance.
Colonel Flagg's prisoner is a spy. You have no right to interfere.
While we're on spies, ask the Major about the secret pocket in her carter belt.
If I didn't hate violence, I'd kick you.
Would you? With high heels?
Now it's the pot, Major. Lean up.
Yes. All right. All right.
Now, hear this. I order you to sign.
Sorry, we can't take any new orders till after Christmas.
You can't disobey him. He's a major.
Hold on, just a minute, just a minute. He's only got 2 clusters. Between us 2 captains, we've got 8 bars. We outrank you by half the chorus.
Major Burns, I just want something. Besides being acting commander, you're also a doctor.
Hey, that's right. Frank's a doctor. How about that, Bob?
Your secret is safe with us, you son of a gun. Certainly your patients will never know.
Release the prisoner.
Well, I
It just so happened WG is showing this episode of MASH. Fucking Connor Flag, man.
Okay, you got your fucking flag. It's your word, not mine.
It's like we have Connor Flag running in America right now.
This'll teach you eggheads not to screw around with intelligence.
Foreman? Promised him a trip to Seoul.
Did you go to the dentist, Grandma?
Not since I retired.
You should go.
Reese, 22nd minute, incredible spin move. Wasn't a sellout, so that's why we're showing it on TV. Because the attendance there, it appear a lot of folks saw. But that was really nice. Hungary and Greek.
And the last couple of years.
What are you gonna have?
Another strikeout, two gone. But there are some natural juices that.
I was not documented.
What about the Underground Railroad? How so?
You say it as if you have a choice.
So you can schedule your next checkup right away.
Closet box. I was forced to talk to Penny about your sexual problems and
Diabetes.
pride went before my fall, causing my flash 123 to go with Tuamots. But wait a minute, you talked to Penny about our sex life? Leonard, it astonishes me how you continually fixate on the trivial. I lost a bet to Wallowitz. Right, you're saying you talked to Penny? Yeah, it's interesting. Hardly. Have I crossed some sort of line again? Well, then. Who cares?
I'm going to break you. Watch you hunt each other. To the death.
Thrown the hell. Prepare to kill the devil himself. May God have mercy on your souls.
Right, well, thanks, Bruce. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Correct. On YouTube at 10 on TBS and the app.
We brought the Infinity QX50 with revolutionary technology to Germany to see what the locals think.
This is not German.
Provided assistance. I need the assistance to drive. Stop! I must see these over.
It's like two engines in one.
And now, the all-new Infinity QX50. The toughest export out. Face the 2019 Infinity QX50 for $379 a month at your local Infinity retailer. Infinity, empower the drive.
I'm waiting for the right moment. So when I ask you out, there's not going to be any turning back for me. Strange to think about how completely where I am in the moment would shape my entire life. I'm glad it happened.
Sorry, Walt. I got hungry. Oh, Snickers got a unite you when you're hungry, catered towards black folks. Love it.
sustained heavy shelling. Mass 4077 to provide trained personnel until replacements arrive.
That's it.
That's it, did they close the check?
My company's a cheap outfit.
Well, they could have said something.
The surgeon's been killed. They need a new cutter, scrub nurse, and a corner.
That's all.
Look, this is a very dangerous mission. I'm not going to blow any sunshine up your skirts. Any volunteers?
I'll go.
What about a surgeon? Sure you're quiet.
I don't want anything I say to be misinterpreted.
All right, fair is fair. No draw straws.
Sir, no straws.
Well, what have you got?
Sausage for breakfast.
I told you they weren't meant to be eaten. Okay, whoever draws the short sausage volunteers. Good luck. Hog.
I should be excused. I'm single. I had the most kids.
You're making a mockery of this.
I wouldn't make a mockery of drawing burnt sausages out of a bedpan to pick a volunteer for the Purple Heart.
Frank?
I don't suppose there were 3 long sausages in there.
No, sir.
Then I volunteer. Hi, Bunty.
Welcome aboard.
Okay. Now we're gonna find someone to do the corpsman job.
I have the personnel cards right here, sir.
Just my luck, I'll get 11.
Good one.
I don't trust you, Henry. You always got something up your sleeve.
Well, that's fine. All right, Father, you pick one. You do trust Father, okay?
It says I should have all my money. If you can't believe your money, who can you believe?
Oh. Here we go.
Terrific. I'm knocking my brains out to get sent home. This assignment will get me there in a box.
Oh, no.
If I don't come back, this pink strapless number should go to that big job. The blonde from Minneapolis.
Yeah, she'll keep it up. She felt like a brick blockhouse.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Promise me you'll go out with other doctors.
Yeah, right. And when you come back, knock twice and give me 5 minutes.
The black community perceives the white power structure in very concrete terms. The man in the ghetto sees his white landlord comes only to collect exorbitant rents and fail to make necessary repairs, while both know that the white-dominated city building inspection department will wink at violations or impose only slight fines. The man in the ghetto sees a white policeman in the corner brutally manhandle a black drunkard in the doorway and at the same time accept a payoff from one of the agents of the white control rackets. He sees the streets in the ghettos lined with uncollected garbage, and he knows that the powers which could send trucks in to collect that garbage are white. When they don't, he knows the reason. The low political esteem in which the black community is held. He looks at the absence of a meaningful curriculum in the ghetto schools. For example, the history books that woefully overlook the historical achievements of black people. And he knows that the school board is controlled by whites. He is not about to listen to intellectual discourse on the pluralistic and fragmented nature of political power. He is faced with a white power structure as monolithic as Europe's colonial offices have been to African and Asian colonies. There is another aspect of colonial politics frequently found in colonial Africa and in the United States. The process of indirect rule. Martin Kilson describes it in Political Change in the West African State, a study of the modernization process in Sierra Leone. That's the book I was reading when I went to Abundance Housing LA's discussion they had with Scott Weiner, the state senator, I think, or congressman, the state senator who tried to who introduced House Bill 827, which was an excellent bill. I wish that bill would have gotten a chance to get voted on. But yeah, that's the book that I was reading when I went to this event. Now, Abundance Housing LA is a great organization. They're really working towards ending homelessness and making sure there's, like he says, abundant, affordable housing in LA. So, and they had a panel discussion where members and other different people, students from USC, and a bunch of other people had went to, and they had a couple of legislatures there, and one of them was Scott Wiener, and the other I can't remember his name, but there was odd, and it was an awesome event, and I had that book with me at the time, this Martin Kilson book, because I found a copy at the library and I was reading it. It was so funny about that event. I went there, I'm sitting there, I'm in there like a good 45 minutes, almost an hour and 10 minutes. Like I'm looking around, everybody that's at the place is either Asian or white. And I'm sitting there wondering like, okay, 95 to 98% of the people in this room right now do not need to worry about affordable housing or worrying about affording housing when they need it. You know what I mean? The people that need it are not in that room. I was one of the people that needed it. You know what I mean? I'm one of those people. I'm sitting there like, so I kind of left after an hour or so, an hour and 10 minutes. But it was still a pretty cool get together, you know. I digress though. There is another aspect of colonial politics frequently found in colonial Africa and in the United States, the process of indirect rule. Martin Kilson describes it in Political Change in the West African State, a study of the modernization process in Sierra Leone. Indirect rule is the method of local colonial administration through the agency of chiefs who exercise executive authority. It was applied in one form or another throughout British colonial Africa and was, from the standpoint of the metropolitan powers budget, a form of colonialism on the cheap. Page 24. In other words, the white power structure rules the black community through local blacks who are responsive to the white leaders. The downtown, the white machine, not the black populace. These black politicians do not exercise effective power. They cannot be relied upon to make forceful demands in behalf of their black constituents, and they become no more than puppets. They put loyalty to a political party before loyalty to their constituents, and thus nullify any bargaining power the black community might develop. Colonial politics causes the subjects to muffle his voice while participating in the councils of the white power structure. The black man forfeits his opportunity to speak forcefully and clearly for his race, and he justifies this in terms of expediency. Thus, when one talks of a Negro establishment in most places in this country, one is talking of an establishment resting on a white power base, of hand-picked blacks whom a base project whom that base projects as showpieces out front. Thus, when one talks of a Negro establishment in most places in this country, One is talking of an establishment resting on a white power base, of hand-picked blacks whom that base projects as showpieces out front. These black leaders are then only as powerful as their white kingmakers will permit them to be. This is no less true of the North than the South. Describing the political situation in Chicago, Wilson Wilson wrote in Negro Politics. Particularly annoying to the Negro politician has been the partial loss of the ability to influence the appointment of Negroes to important or prestigious jobs on public boards and agencies. Negroes selected for membership on such bodies as the Board of Education and the Land Clearance Commission, the Community Conservation Board, the Chicago Planning Commission, and other groups are the token leaders. And control over their appointments has in part passed out of the Negro machine. Page 84. Before Congressman William O. Davis, black congressman from the predominantly black 1st Congressional District of Southside Chicago, was co-opted by the white machine, he was an outspoken champion of the race. Afterward, he became a tool of the downtown white Democratic power structure. The black community no longer had an effective representative who would articulate and fight to relieve their grievances. Mr. Dawson became assimilated. The white political bosses could rule the black community in the same fashion that Britain ruled the African colonies, by indirect rule, not the result as described in Silberman's Crisis in Black and White. Chicago provides an excellent example of how Negroes can be co-opted into inactivity. Dawson surrendered far more than he has obtained for the Negro community. What Dawson obtained were the traditional benefits of the big-time political machine: low-paying jobs for a lot of followers, political intervention with the police and with bail bondsmen, social workers, housing officials, and other bureaucracies whose decisions can affect a poor constituent's life, and a slice of the melon in the form of public housing projects, welfare payments, and the like. What Dawson surrendered was the pride and dignity of his community. He threw away the opportunity to force Chicago's political and civic leaders to identify and deal with the fundamental problems of segregation and oppression. Page 206. Dawson and countless others like him have an answer to this criticism. This is the proper way to operate. You must play ball with the party in order to exact maximum benefit. We reject this notion. It may well result in particular benefits in terms of status or material gains. For individuals, it does not speak to the alleviation of a multitude of social problems shared by the masses. They may also say, if I speak up, I could no longer be permitted to take part in the party councils. I will be ousted, and then the black people will have neither voice nor access. Ultimately, this is at best a spurious argument, which does more to enhance the security of the individual person than it does to gain substantial benefits for the group. In time, one notes that a gap develops between the leadership and the followers. The masses correctly no longer view the leaders as their legitimate representatives. They come to see them more for what they are, emissaries sent by the white society. Identity between the two is lost. This frequently occurred in Africa, and the analogy again is relevant. Former President of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, described the colonial situation in pre-independence Africa in his book, Africa Must Unite. Alright, so I gotta reread that. That was a mouthful real quick, guys. That was... In time, one notes that a gap develops between the leadership and the followers. The masses correctly no longer view the leaders as their legitimate representatives. They come to see them more for what they are, emissaries sent by the white society. identity between the two is lost. This frequently occurred in Africa, and the analogy again is relevant. Former President of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, described the colonial situation in pre-independent Africa in his book Africa Must Unite. The principle of indirect rule adopted in West Africa and also in other parts of the continent allowed a certain amount of local self-government in that chiefs could rule their districts provided they did nothing contrary to the laws of the colonial power, and on condition they accepted certain orders from the colonial government. The system of indirect rule was notably successful for a time in northern Nigeria, where the emirs governed much as they had done before the colonial period. But the system had obvious dangers. In some cases, autocratic chiefs propped up by the colonial government became ineffective and inefficient and unpopular, as the riots against the chiefs in eastern Nigeria in 1929 and in Sierra Leone in 1936 showed. In wide areas of East Africa, where there was no developed system of local government which could be used, headsmen or woman chiefs were appointed, usually from noble families. They were so closely tied up with the colonial powers that many Africans thought chiefs were an invention of the government, and were an invention of the British. Page 18. This process of co-optation and the subsequent widening of the gap between the black elite and the masses is common under colonial rule. There has developed in this country an entire class of captive leaders in the black community. These are black people with certain technical and administrative skills who could provide useful leadership roles in the black community, but do not because they have become beholden to the white power structure. These are black school teachers, county agents, junior executives in management positions with companies, etc. In a study of New Orleans contained in Professor Daniel C. Thompson's The Negro Leadership Class, public school teachers emerged as the largest professional group in the black community in that city. There were 1,600 of them in 1961. These people are college-trained, articulate, and in daily contact with the young minds of the Black South. For the most part, fortunately there are a few exceptions. They are not sources of positive or aggressive community leadership, Thompson concluded. Depending as they do upon white officials, public school teachers have been greatly restricted in their leadership role. Several laws passed by the Louisiana State Legislature, as well as rules and regulations adopted by the state and local school boards in recent years, have made it almost impossible for Negro teachers to identify with racial uplift organizations or even to participate actively in the civil rights movement. This is definitely an important reason why some teachers have remained inactive and silent during heated controversies over civil rights. Page 46. It is crystal clear that most of these people have accommodated themselves to the racist system. They have capitulated to colonial subjugation in exchange for the security of a few dollars and dubious status. They are effectively lost to the struggle of an improved black position, which will fundamentally challenge their racist system. John A. Williams tells in This Is My Country Too of how he went from Alabama State College, the state college for black people, in 1963 to interview a black professor who brusquely told him, "Governor Wallace pays my salary. I have nothing to say to you. Excuse me, I have a class to get to." Page 62. When black people play colonial politics, they also mislead the white community into thinking that it has the sanction of the blacks. A professor of political science who made a study of black people in Detroit politics from 1956 to 1960 has concluded, the fact that the Negro participates in the system by voting and participating in the party politics in the North should not lead us to conclude that he has accepted the popular consensus of the society about the polity. His support and work for the Democratic Party is more a strategic compromise in most cases than a wholehearted endorsement of the party. My own work in Detroit led me to conclude that Negro Party officers are not loyal to the Democratic Party in the way that the ethnic groups or other organized groups such as labor have been. Although the Democratic Party UAW coalition in Detroit has given the Negro a number of positions in the party hierarchy, it has not included him in the decision-making process. As in the as in the colonial situation, the Negro has developed a submissive aggression syndrome. As is the colonial situation, the Negro has developed a submission aggression syndrome. When he attends campaign strategy meetings, When he attends campaign strategy meetings, he appears to be submissive, willingly accepting the strategies suggested by the white leaders, despite their seeming acceptance of this condescending treatment. After these meetings, the Negro precinct workers will tell you that they had to go along with all that talk in order to make sure that they were represented. They openly express their resentment of the party hierarchy and reveal themselves as much more militant about the Negro cause than was apparent during the meeting. A.W. Singham, The Political Socialization of Marginal Groups. Paper presented at the 1966 annual meeting of the American Political Science Association, New York City. This stance is not an uncommon one. More than a handful of black people will admit privately their contempt for insincere whites with whom they must work and deal. In all likelihood, the contempt is mutual. They feel secure in articulating their true feelings only when out of hearing range of the man. Here's my quote. Those who would assume the responsibility of representing black people in this country must be able to throw off the notion that they can effectively do so and still maintain a maximum amount of security. Jobs will have to be sacrificed, positions of prestige and status given up, favors forfeited. It may well be, and we think it is, that leadership and security are basically incompatible. When one forcefully challenges the racist system, one cannot at the same time expect that system to reward him or even treat him comfortably. Political leadership which pacifies and stifles its voice and then rationalizes this on grounds of gaining something from our people is at bottom gaining only meaningless token rewards that an affluent society is perfectly willing to give. A final aspect of political colonialism is the manipulation of political boundaries and the devising of restrictive electoral systems. The point is frequently made that black people are only 10% of the population, no less a personage than President Johnson has seen fit to remind us of this ratio. It is seldom pointed out that this minority is geographically located so as to create potential majority blacks, that strategic location being an ironic side effect of segregation. Trying to tell you, yo, it is all right there for us. It is all right there for us. No lie. It is seldom pointed out that this minority is geographically located so as to create potential majority blacks, their strategic location being an ironic side effect of segregation. But black people have never been able to utilize fully their numerical voting strength. Where we could vote, the white political machines have gerrymandered black communities so that the true voting strength is now reflected in political representation. Would anyone looking at the distribution of political power and representation in Manhattan ever think that black people represent 60% of the population? On the local level, elections to city councils by the at-large system rather than by districts reduces the number of representatives coming out of the black community. In Detroit, which uses the at-large system, there was not a black man on the city council until 1957 despite a vast black population, especially during World War II. Also, the larger the electoral district, the greater the likelihood of there not being a Negro elected because he has to appeal to whites for their votes too. Los Angeles, with very large city council electoral districts, saw the first black councilman only in 1963. The decision makers are most adept at devising ways or utilizing existing factors to maintain their monopoly of political power. The economic relationship of America's black communities to the larger community also reflects their colonial status. The political power exercised over this community goes hand in glove with the economic deprivation experienced by the black citizens. The economic relationship of America's black communities to the larger society also reflects their colonial status. The political power exercised over these communities goes hand in glove with the economic deprivation experienced by the black citizens. Historically, colonies have existed for the sole purpose of enriching, in one form or another, the colonizer. The consequence is to maintain the economic dependence to maintain the economic dependence of the colonized. All too frequently, we hear of the missionary motive behind colonization, to civilize, to Christianize the underdeveloped backwards people. But read these words of a French colonial secretary of state in 1923. What is the use of painting the truth? At the start, colonization was not an act of civilization, nor was it a desire to civilize. It was an act to force motivated by interest, an episode in the vital competition which from man to man, from group to group, has gone on ever increasing. The people who set out to seize colonies in the distant lands were thinking primarily of themselves, and were working for their own profits and conquering for their own power. One is immediately reminded of the bitter maxim voiced by many black Africans today. The missionaries came for our goods, not for our good. Indeed, the missionaries turned the Africans' eyes towards heaven and then robbed them blind in the process. The colonies were sources from which raw material was taken and markets to which finished products were sold. Manufacture and production was prohibited if it meant, as it usually did, competition with the mother country. Rich in natural resources, Africa did not reap the benefits of those resources herself. In the Gold Coast, now Ghana, where the cocoa crop was the largest in the world, there was not one chocolate factory. Hershey's. Uh, I'm, I'm just saying, man. You know, Swiss chocolate, Belgian chocolate,